All India ranked 17 for the UPSC Examination 2025. You had 2 failed attempts at prelims.
It's true that when you fail twice, you'll be worried. My biggest worry was also that I had to write prelims again. I was so much focused on reading new things and not revising what I already read. That is where I lagged in second attempt. Now when I am here, I see it as a bittersweet experience because it is when I failed 2 prelims, I got time to prepare for my mains. In the last, I was so much used to reading NCRTs that I'd finish one NCRT in 1 or 2 hours. But I saw it from there and I wrote in introduction of my answer. In the very first test I wrote, I got 102 if I'm not wrong. And in the last test, I got 167. Consistency and the clear mindset are the key to scoring good marks and key to any good thing in this world.
Hello. Welcome to another episode of Enlite IAS Toppers Talks. Today, we have with us Chitwan Jain, who secured All India rank 17 for the UPSC Examination 2025. Chitwan, heartiest congratulations on
Thank you
your
so much.
success. So, just tell us a bit about yourself so that the audience gets to know you.
I come from a small town, Ashoknagar in Madhya Pradesh, from where I completed my schooling. Then on, I went to complete my graduation from Delhi University.
Okay.
And it is in the third year of the graduation when I started my preparation. And it took me around 3 attempts
Okay.
and around 2.5 or 3 years
Okay.
to be here.
So, were you very focused from the very beginning itself that you wanted UPSC, or it was just a trial? And how did it go? What was your journey?
No, so from very beginning, initially I had an interest towards civil services. So I knew this was where I had to be.
Okay.
So I started.
Okay. All right. So that's a focused kind of approach that he had from the very beginning, which is very good. And that has clearly reflected in his mains marks. You are one among the top 5, I guess, in the mains total score. So it was exceptionally good. So what was different in your main strategy? Because why I'm specifically asking you is because lots of people prepare for the mains, thousands of people, but it's very difficult to convert that your work into results. So what did you do differently in order to get such good marks?
So regarding mains, I think I didn't do anything differently, but I did what I did in a very circular manner. From where I started, I used to come at the end in the questions, and I limited my resources, yet not limit them to a very small number. For example, if you say there has to be different approaches to answer writing in different GSs. For GS 1, 2, 3, 4. For 4, you need more quotes, emotional proverbs, the keywords, theories, philosophers, which I simultaneously use from, say, my optional philosophy to ethics. And in GS paper 2, for example, in polity, we tend to use more and more case laws, the articles, examples, and data points. And GS3, we mainly have to rely upon the case studies and the best practices around the world. And let's say in disaster management, we have to be restricted to NDMA guidelines. So every GS paper has a defined criteria of how you write an answer, and ultimately in mains, answers are what will fetch you marks.
Yes.
So I just analyze the PYQs, I jot down my sources, I revise them again and again. I made my short notes in which there were committees, there were examples, there were data, there were facts, SDGs where I can use the intros, conclusions. I already had, say, a blueprint of questions which might come and blueprint of answers which I am going to write. So this saved my time in the actual paper. So the two important things are write a good answer and write it within the time frame. So these were the two things which I think worked well.
Okay, so like in short, a very detailed, structured, anticipated kind of note making, and not just run around every resource that is available in the market or in the stores, right?
Yeah.
That will help you. And repeated revisions of your own notes is what actually gave you the strength in the mains. That's something I think every aspirant can replicate. They can adapt also. Okay, but I think your prelims story is slightly different because, as far as I remember, you had 2 failed attempts at prelims. So what happened? Like if you're given an option to go back 2 years and to correct what went wrong in your prelims preparation, so what would you do then?
So it's true that I failed 2 prelims, but now when I am here, I see it as a bittersweet experience because
Okay.
it is when I failed 2 prelims, I got time to prepare for my mains. That is not something I'd suggest people to do, but that is now how I see it. Because in the first prelims, I was in the college. I was juggling among both college and studies in UPSC. That didn't work for me. I had very much issues in time management, resource, finding the resources, finding the good teachers. But once I wasted my time, or I'd say I invested my time in that, the second attempt, I knew from where I have to read, from where I have to study, what teachers I have to consult, what sources I have to go upon. But then too, in the second attempt, I was so much uh, focused on reading new things and not revising what I already read. That is where I lagged in second attempt. So I generally had this habit to refer to at least more than one source
Okay.
for a specific subject or a topic. So that was counterproductive, especially if I see in pre, which is not true for mains. For mains, I think you should have more than at least 2 sources from where you can compare and study. But for prelims, you'll have to go back to the basics and read it again. For example, the geography NCRTs, polity, Lakshmikant.
Yeah.
So in second attempt, I read them, but I didn't revise them.
Okay.
So that is where I was lagging in the second attempt. And in the third attempt, I read NCRTs at least 3 times. Lakshmikant, I read it thrice. And in the last, I was so much used to reading NCRTs that I'd finish one NCRT of say geography in 1 or 2 hours because I knew where I had to go, what I have to read, which part is important, and from where the questions come. So this came from analysis of PYQ, which is also one thing I missed in earlier attempts. So instead of only analyzing my test series, I used to analyze PYQs more thoroughly.
Okay.
So which give me a proper idea of what topics say are very important, where I have to study, what I have to go through. So these are a few takeaways from my 2 failed attempts.
So basically, for the main trick for prelims is to focus on your sources, repeated reading and revision so that it becomes so easy. And for him, it became so easy that he could finish one NCRT in 1 or 2 hours. That's how, well he knew the content of that thing. That's amazing. Good. Okay. So, and were you tensed or for prelims? Usually what I've heard from students and from other aspirants and all that is that you tend to get worried because I think lakhs of people write the prelims and from there they just cut it down to thousands, I guess. So was there a kind of jitters or worry? Were you worried or tensed? How did you manage your mindset? Because that's also very important, I guess.
It's true that when you fail twice, you will be worried. My biggest worry since when I was waiting for the result was also that I had to write prelims again.
Yeah.
That fear of prelims came into my head. But the positive side to it was while I was preparing, I knew where I went wrong.
Yeah.
So it is very important to know where you were wrong to correct them in future. For example, the mistakes I did in earlier attempts, unfortunately, if I had to write this attempt again, I would not do that again. So the fear comes down, but it still remains.
Okay. So manage your fear. And course correction is something that's very important. Okay. You are a commerce graduate. So what went in your mind while deciding your optionals? And I'm pretty sure that philosophy might not have been an obvious choice. But of course, there would have been some kind of a strong reason for you to choose philosophy as your optional. So how and why philosophy?
So my choice of commerce was also not because I like the subject, but I chose commerce because I like to explore new subjects.
Okay.
So since till class 10th, I almost read every subject's basics like maths, science, everything was done.
Okay.
The only thing which was remaining was commerce per se, because economics was also something which was done. So the basics of accountings, business studies were something new to me. So I went on to choose commerce there. And then when it comes to choosing philosophy in UPSC, there were a few options because I was not very good in technical subjects, so that part was gone. The few which remained with me were sociology, philosophy. These two were the last two from where I have to choose. I attended a few classes of both.
Okay.
And my natural interest developed toward philosophy. I watched a few classes and then I joined a foundation course for philosophy where I read it. I learned philosophy, I gained interest and I chose philosophy there.
Okay. And how was the paper 2 experience in philosophy? Why I specifically asked was because in all optionals, paper 2 is a kind of an application paper. In paper 1, you read about all the theories or concepts or any such static things. And in paper 2, it comes to applying these things to in a sort of a interesting way, I would guess. So, and your paper 2 marks are also very good. So, how did you approach? Were there test series or what was your preparation for your paper 2?
So for paper 2, everyone and toppers also, the teachers also said that paper 2 is not about what you are learning. It is how you reproduce it.
Yeah.
Because obviously, as you said, it is more important to apply your knowledge there. For example, in paper 2, if we say POR, you have points there. Say notions of God, problem of evil. But what makes your answer different in paper 2 is what examples you give there. For example, one I can remember is this year there was a question on this concept of soul in Bhagavad Gita.
Okay.
Everyone knows the concept of soul in Bhagavad Gita revolves around the immortality of soul, how it can never be killed. So everyone will write about that. But what fortunately was a blessing for me was on the exam day where I was sitting, on left of me there was an obituary newspaper which mentioned the whole slok of Gita which was on soul. That
Okay.
nennam jisko nain nahi maar sakte and everything. I did not remember that completely, but I saw it from there and I wrote it in introduction of my answer.
Oh, amazing.
And also, if I'm sitting here, I can see the statue of Ashoka's line there. So if a question comes to me about bureaucracy, I'll write that bureaucracy should be like fourth line of Ashoka, which cannot be seen but felt. So in paper
Okay.
2, what I'm trying to say is it is how you analyze things around you and how you connect it to the question and present it to them. Because paper 1 is obviously very theoretical. You have to write what philosopher said. You cannot give your own inputs. That is useless because that is not asked in question. Even if they ask, what do you think? What do you think means what other philosopher think about that. But in paper 2, it is what actually do you think about that concept for
How
say
you interpret
equality, equality, liberty, religion, God. That is what actually I think gave me edge in paper 2.
Okay, so presence of mind is something that I think every aspirant should either have or develop, however you make it. But this is amazing. This is a very interesting story that you shared. And in my interactions with Mahesh sir, what I got to know about you is you're very, especially when it came to the test series that you did with them, philosophy optional test series, you were very focused and also in the sense, if I can say, it's a kind of a no-nonsense attitude in the sense, okay, your initial test series, if there were some mistakes, you're not disheartened by it. You just write it, you get the feedback and you take that feedback in a very positive way. Constructively, you integrate into your preparation. And then towards the end, what he was saying is that your answers became so good. So that is a kind of, I think, adaptation. How did you, because it's very difficult for the aspirants to, once you get a setback, you're just disheartened at that moment, especially optionals, because the optionals is something which we bank on a lot. So how did you find the test series and how did you integrate your, make them better? What was your journey in as far as the test series are concerned? Philosophy. Yeah.
So with Enlite, I joined the test series part. I did my foundation somewhere else. So the test series part, I came to know about it from the earlier toppers like Avinash sir, Archit sir, and some of my friends were also enrolled in Enlite that time. So initially I was very skeptical because generally what happens is when you join a test series or any test series for that matter of fact, they provide you a model answer. But what sir used to do is he conducts a session or discussion for every test.
Okay.
wherein he does not tell you what model answer should look like, but he tells you what checker expects from you.
Okay.
So initially I thought it is not as useful, because what I need is, if I am not able to write an answer, I need answer to it, which I can say learn upon, or which I can take as a reference and write the next time it comes to me. But when I attended the discussions, and there was a content repository which had questions of, say, like 10 years of the exam and 10 years of earlier test series only.
Okay.
So you get to know idea about how questions are evolving. Are they evolving or not? What is repeating? What is not repeating? So in discussions, for example, a question comes, which is a bouncer. And I know it is a bouncer because I don't know answer to it, in spite of the fact that I've read it. So in discussion only, sir said, used to say, this question is a bouncer. You don't have to attempt it with full heart. You have to write whatever you know in this answer and try to give as much as possible and not hover upon one single point. Because if X is asked and you've not studied about it and you write about X, you will ultimately beat around the bush and not address it. But what you should do is write about X, Y, Z, A, B, C. So somewhere it hits. This is for a question which is not in your territory.
Okay.
And for example, if there is a question which is in your territory, you'll have to tell everything about that only. So these were a few things which helped me during discussions. I had read earlier questions, the toppers copies available, and as you talked about change in my marks. So initially, in the very first test I wrote, I got 102 if I'm not wrong, and in the last test I got 167.
Okay.
So that was something which I used to say a lot, that consistency and the clear mindset are the key to scoring good marks and key to any good thing in this world. So I was consistent. In spite of the fact that I was not getting good marks initially, I wrote every test in the test series, and I wrote in exact time frames. If there's a question I would not attempt in exact time frame, I left it.
Okay.
Not initial, not all over it, but initially in the test paper, in the test paper I left it. I gave it as it is for checking to be real to myself. So what I say worked for me is to be consistent, write the questions, because initially when you write questions, you are only someone who knows content of it. But when you write questions again and again and again, you know how to use content in different ways and what works. So when I wrote several tests, I knew where I was lagging, and I saw discussions, I saw toppers copy. I used to write those exact answers and compare my answers to what toppers used to write and see where difference lies. So these are the few things I tried in
Very,
tests.
very well laid out strategy he always has or had for this test, especially for the optionals. So if I can say clear-mindedness, consistency, time management, and question management also. You don't need to put your heart into every question. There can be bouncers, as he said. So in bouncers, just manage them, but put your entire time and effort into those questions where you can score really well. So that's a very interesting insight that you've told the aspirants. I think you've been in the north consistently, but somewhere down the line in the preparation phase, you have been in touch with an institute which is far down in the south. So I think that became possible through an online sort of a mentorship. So what do you feel about the online study sessions or the offline? Should the preparations be, because I think post-COVID especially, there has been a shift in the approach to preparation for anything. For civil services also, offline, online is equivalently, I think, prevalent now. So what was more comfortable to you? And, how come Enlite? Because again, it's an institute in the south. So how did you know about it? And how comfortable or how effective was online mentoring and test series for you?
So as I mentioned earlier also, I tend to, for mains specifically, I tend to diversify my sources. At least to more than once. So I did my coaching for philosophy as a foundation here in Delhi only. But when it came to test series, as I mentioned earlier also, I saw a few reviews from toppers. I consulted few of my friends who were also enrolled here. So I was sort of skeptical, as I said, but I joined it to get a diversified viewpoint. So it did work well for me because initially also when I was offline coaching student
Okay.
in GS or in optional whatever, that was time management very big issue was there in that. So
You have to go to the
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
place.
so for online medium, I say it suits me because I am kind of person who manages time on my own wish. So
Okay.
if someone else tells me you have to study in these hours,
Hmm.
maybe if I'm not comfortable with that, I'd rather skip it because I don't think if I study half-heartedly, it'll yield me more. So online
Absolutely.
mediums gives you that advantage. Also, you mentioned about COVID. It was virtually not possible for offline means. So yeah, I think online medium is not just a option nowadays. It is a mandatory or a complementary thing to offline. Or say, I'd say hybrid mode is very nice. If you can't be there, you can just be online. For example, the sessions with Mahesh Shah were always offline. I never met him personally till this very day.
Online.
Yeah, yeah.
You meant online. Yeah.
Yeah, I meant online. Sorry, I never met him personally
Yeah.
for mentorships. So, but there was a connect between us. So it worked well. So I think online medium is also not say secondary choice nowadays because online does serve as good as offline. It's just a matter of fact how you perceive it and is it working for you. So it did work for me.
Okay. So you can sit in the comfort of your home or your study space and also have the luxury of your own time. You can study it at your own pace. So yeah, that's definitely yes. So yes, it was a very interesting conversation, Chitwan, and thank you so much for spending time with us. And all the best for all your future endeavors.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you for having me.